Thanks, Ada, and thanks to everyone who's read. It's unbelievable. The story is called Happy Pappy Weekend. And again, if it's triggering, um, do what you need to do. I appreciate that. I grew up in Lake Forest, Illinois, a wealthy suburb on the North Shore of Chicago. My dad was a successful businessman. My mother was a homemaker, and I had two siblings. On the outside, everything looked like the perfect American dream. We belonged to a country club and had tennis lessons and swim lessons. We took luxury vacations. We attended the Episcopal Church. We looked the part. But something was terribly wrong. My dad was an alcoholic with a whole second life in Chicago. He stayed out all night in bars with his friends and was cheating on my mother and would come home at 4 in the morning. But we always kept going as though nothing was happening. That's just what we did. I was my dad's favorite. At age 16, he let me drink Smirnoff vodka with him. At the dinner table, my dad and I would discuss literature and culture. We would go on for hours. My dad even had a nickname for me. He called me AF, which stood for Annie Fanny in Playboy, a character in Playboy magazine. My dad walked around in his underwear after church, grabbing his crotch. He did other inappropriate stuff all the time. We thought it was normal. In 1974, I attended Skidmore College in Saratoga Springs, New York. The drinking age in New York was 18. Though I was 17, I drank in the bars to excess all the time. Skidmore, a girls' school, had all kinds of parties all of the time. Many of them revolved around alcohol. And in spring, there was one that everyone was really excited about. It was the Happy Pappy Weekend. This was a major tradition at Skidmore where fathers came to see their daughters from all over the U.S. I was so excited. My dad agreed to come. He said over the phone, "I've paid for the goddamn school. Of course I'll be a pappy." There was a whole weekend filled with daughter and pappy activities, but the activity I remember most, etched in my mind, was the kickoff cocktail party in one of the historical fancy bars in Saratoga. I remember that the room was beautiful. There were round tables with white tablecloths, and there were elaborate banners that said, "Welcome, Pappies." There were waiters passing elegant hors d'oeuvres on fancy trays. All the Pappies were dressed in blue blazers with corduroy pants, some with tiny mallard ducks on them. Pappies were being introduced to other Pappies from all over the country. "Good to see you, Charles. I went to Choate too. Bethany is doing so well." My dad wasn't interacting with the other Pappies. Instead, we sat at the bar alone. My dad had had drinks in his hotel room because I could smell it when he got to the party. I was sipping a Singapore Sling. I don't remember what alcohol was in it, but it was very popular at school and it was red. I had a long skirt on and a peasant top. My dad didn't eat any of the hors d'oeuvres, just sat, slammed vodkas, and smoked Viceroy cigarettes. We were chatting about how great it was that I was into creative writing and how much he loved that I was into Jack Kerouac. It was like I was back home chatting like when I was 16 at the kitchen table. I was glad to be with my pappy. Then all of a sudden, my dad reached over and rammed his hand down my skirt, violently clawing at my clit. I know now what to call it. I didn't then. I froze and was completely rigid. He called me another name, Nancy. "You are so beautiful." I don't know how long it went on, but I don't think it was very long. I left my body but kept smiling. He took his hand out of my skirt and came out of what I know now was a blackout, and we continued to chat about Kerouac and sip our drinks. I have no idea how I got back to my dorm. I don't remember the rest of Happy Pappy Weekend. A couple months later, now it's summer. My mom and I are sitting at the kitchen table after playing a game of tennis. My mom had her big round 70s glasses on and was smoking a cool cigarette. I thought it would be a good time, because I was alone with my mom, to tell her about Happy Pappy Weekend. I thought, she's my mom. She's going to help me with this. I said, "Can I tell you something?" "Sure." And I said, "Dad touched me on my vagina at Happy Pappy Weekend." She took a long, slow drag from her cool cigarette, paused, then said, "If you ever repeat that in this house again, you have no idea how much trouble you'll be in." And then we went back to talking about tennis. The sexual abuse continued with my dad. So when the Kavanaugh thing hit, it blew the lid off my anger. I became obsessed with it, the Kavanaugh and Dr. Blasey Ford hearings. I was watching TV all the time. I was on Twitter, Facebook, and on the phone with all my female friends. I was in a blind rage. My dad was like this. My boyfriend in high school who fingered me like this. And there was a professor in college who essentially raped me in a bunk bed. And now, at 60 years old, I've addressed the impact of this sexual abuse in group and individual therapy. I don't know why it took me this long. I had mentioned it to people over the years, but had never delved into it like when I was 60. I was in denial. I referred to my dad as funny and sarcastic. Yes, he had a drinking problem, but so what? At first, there was shock and shame when I was confronted in therapy with the reality of what had happened to me. But talking about it in group and individual therapy helped me come out of denial and own it. The people who were supposed to protect me the most as a child ended up being my abuser and admonished me for speaking out. With Kavanaugh, I was outraged. I can completely resonate with Dr. Ford's testimony. I can understand waiting. After I told my mom, it took me another 42 years to openly say my story. My life looked perfect, and it happened to me. I saw, he's getting away with it. He can do anything, but it didn't affect his prospects for the Supreme Court. Like Kavanaugh, my dad was successful. So if you're a privileged, successful man, you can get away with anything. Today, I'm grateful that the awareness of sexual abuse is now out in the open. I'm grateful I experienced the rage of my own story and shared it with my friends and wrote about it. But I'm also incredibly grateful for my 20-year-old daughter. But this brought up what terrifies my husband and I the most, that she'll be a victim of sexual abuse. My daughter is amazing. She is in college and a writer-performer like myself. But she also has cerebral palsy, which means she has difficulty walking. She uses a cane. She's also very naive and thinks the best of everyone. It's a statistic that most people with physical disabilities are apt to be sexually abused. They're easy targets. I can run. She cannot. I can deck someone, and she cannot. I can kick someone in the balls, and she cannot. So this is my journey, to be a vigilante about her protection because I wasn't protected, to advocate for her in the world because no one advocated for me, to love her unconditionally and treat her with dignity because no one did that for me. The onslaught of sexual abuse almost destroyed me, but it didn't. It forged a warrior. Thank you.